Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Jason Weil. This is the weekly JupyterLab call for February 22nd, 2023. Hope everyone's doing well. We have an agenda, which if you haven't already seen, I will drop into the chat here. Looks like we got a pretty light agenda so far, but if anyone would like to add something to it, please feel free. Once we're done with the agenda, and I'll stop the recording before this, we can have some additional off-the-record discussions. And today we'll take a look at issue triage for JupyterLab 4.0.0 enhancements. Remember, our goal is to have the enhancements ready to go by the end of the month, which is coming up very soon. And so we'll take a look at that. But it looks like Frederick is up first.
Hello, everybody. Sorry, I have a bad internet connection lately, so no video for me. Just first, an announcement. There's been the opening of the Google season of docs. So basically, every year Google is providing for open source organization grant to finance technical writers. For documentation, I don't think we have applied in the past, but I think it would be good if we can try because our documentation is one of the part we are really like user is looking for improvement on that side, let's say. So if somebody wants to submit something, or maybe we can create an issue on the Team Compass and try to synchronize there with people that are interested in that subject. So basically, what we need to provide is support for like decide what we want as a target for the technical writer, and also provide support for him, she. So that's for the announcement. And the second thing is just the question that I was last week, just to be sure, is it okay then if I do a release candidate of Lumino 2? I don't know if Mike is there today. Yeah, I see Mike, because I think you are trying to maybe have an additional thing. Okay. So okay, don't. So Mike said on the chat, go for it. So I'll do the release tomorrow of the release candidate of Lumino 2. Thanks. And so I'll set up an issue on the Team Compass, I think, for the Google of Doc thing.
Okay. Any other topics before we move on?
No, I think we can move on.
Andrea is next. A lot of error messages in pre-HTML tags. Why don't you go ahead, Andrea? You are muted, Andrea.
Yep.
Oh, there you go.
Yep. Thank you. So, hey, everyone. So I've been getting an error message in Extension Manager, and I can reproduce it pretty reliably, and it overflows. So I was looking into why it overflows, and this error message and a lot of error messages over the JupyterLab code base are formatted with pre-tags, HTML tags, like the pre-formatted text, which the default behavior for this tag is to display strings and white spaces in particular in the same manner as they're displayed in HTML. So because of this, you can display the ASCII-like art using these tags, but text would overflow if the parent node doesn't have enough width or space for the text. So you can go to this link to see more details for the discussion. I wanted to get a background. Like, is this functionality that like why this tag is used is my assumption that it is used for a SCI like art is correct. If it is not, why it is used. If it is correct, is this functionality used? What can we do so that large error text would not overflow? It's not a problem for small error messages. It is a problem for larger error messages. Just wanted to kick off a discussion. You can just proceed to this link that I posted in chat, and that is also in the agenda, and participate in a discussion.
I'm not sure so much, Andrew, that it has to be for ASCII art, but rather to make sure that if the output for whatever reason includes stuff that looks like an HTML tag, it doesn't interfere with the rest of the page. That you could potentially inject something in, like any less than sign could be interpreted as an HTML tag and mess up the rest of the page.
Oh, I see. So it's more of like a sanitization procedure.
Yeah, I mean, there are other ways to sanitize, of course.
Yeah, but problem still persists. If we have large error message and we don't have a parent div wide enough, which parent div, if parent div displays arbitrary error messages, it cannot know how large of an error message is. Also, if we don't have limits for the length of error messages, there are no limits. So some error messages will overflow with how they are set up. So I invite everyone to participate in discussion if you have anything to add. Yep. In a written form in particular.
Okay. Sounds good. If there's no other questions about that, Isabella is next up on the agenda.
Just a brief comment. There was a recent blog post showcasing a situation where an overflow in Y overflow was causing a security problem because the list of permissions that were requested by an extension, it's completely not related to JupyterLab, was only showing like top 5 that happens in like Chrome on macOS because the scroll bar is hidden by default. So we should probably be careful with things like that. I don't know if we've seen that. Like X overflow is not such a big issue, but Y overflow, yeah, just for awareness.
Okay, I see Tony has his hand up as well.
Yeah, I'm curious. So we've been getting some feedback on navigating notebooks with assistive technology, and we've got errors and we've got warnings, and sometimes those things like blend together. I'm wondering, does JupyterLab have like a consistent concept of warning and error, so that, yeah, all the applications and sort of error messages kind of appear the same?
So if anyone can expand on what would I would say, please add, because my expertise is based on this exploration of JupyterLab that I did within trying to solve the issue I was just talking. So from what I can say, no, it's pretty much just strings displayed in a dialogues or wherever. So yes.
This seems like this would be a good enhancement request for accessibility reasons.
Yep, definitely agree with that.
Okay. Any other questions about Andrew's topic? If not, Isabella, you're next.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just here with kind of my usual announcements. 15 minutes after the scheduled end of this call, which I presume we will go to with triage, but just in case there's any issues, we have our accessibility meeting. Yeah, everyone is welcome there. I don't know, there's a good chance Tony will be there asking questions about what we just talked about, but you never know what's going to happen. Yeah, so feel free to drop in if you have time. The other meeting I'm going to announce is next week. We do have the community call. I know I haven't announced that in these calls in what feels like a while, but who knows? So yeah, if people have demos or other things they're excited for, would love to see you at that call too. For Pacific time people, we managed to work with the security team. So big thanks to them and Roland for reaching out about that. So we are now at like 8 a.m. Pacific again, if that helps anyone. So sorry, I know moving later is probably difficult for some people, but cycling back a little. But yeah, I linked in the agenda, the discourse post with all the details. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Normally, yeah, previously that had been scheduled for 7 a.m. Pacific, but because
For a while.
because the security team moved our meeting schedule, it doesn't conflict anymore at 8 o'clock. So please check your calendar. Okay, thank you, Isabella. Fernando is up next.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I dialed in with my phone as well. So yeah, first a quick announcement that for those of you who may not be paying attention to the work on MIST, and I'm happy to expand on kind of what MIST is for those who may not be aware, but there's been a lot of progress. I left some links in the agenda about to the core tools website and the JupyterLab plugin, on which there's been a ton of progress. MIST, as a quick refresher for those who may not have been tracking that, was something that we started years ago. It began as a private repo because I was kind of afraid of doing this in a public repo and waiting in the thick middle of the debate about academic markdown and publishing markdown and whatnot and RMD. But since the common mark discussions never kind of went anywhere, eventually that was the format that Chris Holgraf picked up as the core extended format for JupyterLab. It's basically markdown extended with ideas from restructured text, but within the syntactic structure of Markdown. And the tool at the team at CurveNote has been led by Rowan Cockett, has been making a ton of progress. There's now a core TypeScript implementation that can run both inside JupyterLab and at the command line. And therefore, what we're thinking is this is probably the future of the executable books of the Jupyter book machinery will be eventually at some point to replace the Sphinx engine with this TypeScript engine that can be consistent both for static rendering at the command line and for rendering live in JupyterLab. It's really, really cool. I'll suggest that Rowan maybe come to the community call, Isabella. Thanks for flagging that, because I'm going to talk to him and see if either him or somebody else from the team is available to do a little demo next week. This weekend, he was texting me. I'll drop some links on the chat. Some of the cool things he's done with like inline spark lines. One thing that will be relevant, I know many people have asked for this. In fact, I've heard a number of people who have said they can't use Jupyter Book and they're using Quarto because we don't have inline kernel variable rendering in the Markdown by default in Jupyter, and Quarto does that, and our Markdown does that. And this weekend, Rowan has been working on that. There's an issue. That's a pretty complicated topic. People have lots of opinions, both on the syntax and caching and rendering. So if people have ideas or want to provide feedback, please hop into the MIST discussions, because now is the time to provide input on that feature. There's been a few prototype implementations of that over the years, but I think now we're going to have something that becomes permanent. Rowan is going to be remotely participating in the notebook format workshop, but Steve Purves from his team will be there in person. And my hope is that anyone who's interested on the document side of Jupyter, the Markdown side of things, participates in these discussions, because I think MIST eventually should become our default Markdown format. I mean, obviously that discussion will take place in depth at the workshop, but I think it meets a lot of things that we've needed for a long time, and that the Markdown community never quite figured out a solution. And having something which is cleanly woven into the architecture of Jupyter and understands how the rest of our system will be fantastic. I'm using it, I'm testing it with my students. It's a lot of fun. It does things that we've wanted for years. So I hope people will provide feedback and test it and see if it meets their needs. And if it doesn't, can help improve it. So that was an announcement. I'm happy to answer some questions. I'm not the one writing the code, but I'm working pretty closely with Rowan and the team on that. And I'm happy to answer questions. I'm super excited about it. There's a binder link on the JupyterLab plugin demo that I put a link for, and you can play with it on Binder. It's really fun. Yes, Frederic, if you install the plugin, by default, it replaces the markdown cell renderer, and that's by design. That behavior can be disabled. It can be disabled with a flag of the command line if you don't want that to be the case, so that it doesn't replace it, and then it becomes an extra option in open with, and you can open the notebook either with the classic renderer or the new MIST renderer. Should be a new cell type though, Mike, question. I honestly don't think so. Yes, Nick emphatically beat me to it. We had more cell types in the past, and that led to more complexity than I think we were happy with. So I think, I mean, this is probably a more detailed conversation to have in the notebook format discussion. But my instinctual reaction is also that we should try to not keep extending cell types. We also had heading cell types, for example, at some point, and we realized we could just understand heading structure from within existing cells, and that would simplify a lot of things. So that's kind of where we've landed so far, but obviously that's a topic that admits a good discussion, and that probably would be a good topic to talk at the notebook workshop. Unfortunately, I can't make it to that workshop. I'm teaching here and I can't go. Any other questions on this topic? Let's see, new message. The multiple kernels in one notebook conversation. We had a version of that debate like in depth years ago. We landed pretty squarely that our architecture should be one kernel at a time, and that it would be possible to implement multiplexing kernels. In fact, IPython is in a sense multiplexing with magics. If you have the right magics, if you have magics like the Cython, Julia, or magics, those effectively give you a kind of a multi-kernel behavior. And you could add, we've never added a data bus to them. That could be a mechanism for sharing, which is what multi-kernel systems tend to do. Again, that could be revisited, but we definitely had a workshop, a one-day all hands. I mean, when all hands meant a lot less people, but years and years ago, we had a very in-depth discussion about that, and we all eventually seemed to land squarely on the let's have a single kernel in the architecture. Now, that was years ago. New ideas, new people, new thoughts. Certainly welcome topic to be revisited, but at least I'm giving you the historical perspective that everybody, after going around pretty in detail on that one, we seem to comfortably conclude that we should not try to extend the architecture to be multi-kernel, that the complexity cost of having to abstract over kernels everywhere in the design did not offset the benefits, and that we could get the necessary benefits by allowing kernels that did that the way, for example, IPython does it, or the SOS kernel. Where can I find the notebook format meeting? It's a workshop. It's one of the community workshops. I can Google it, Jupyter community, hold on, notebook form. Here, I just found the link. Here, let me drop it on the chat, Andre. There you go. And Frederic will be hosting, wrote the blog post, so I'm sure Frederic knows more. Nick, yeah, that was a discussion that I said years ago. I think it was a meeting here at Berkeley when Paul Ivanov was still here at Berkeley, so it was a very long time ago. Jason might not even have been at that meeting. I don't know if anybody on this call was at that meeting. It was a long time ago, so it could certainly be revisited, but I'm giving you the historical kind of perspective of kind of where we are. And yes, syntax highlighting is trash in magics. I believe that's always been a sore point of magics. I think that is something that we could fix separately from the question of multiple kernels. I think it's a valid UI question for JupyterLab to improve on, but I believe that's something that we should handle separately from dealing with multiple kernels. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, and so I actually want to spend some time on topic number 2 in my notes. Unless people want to keep talking about this, I'm happy to continue talking about the MIST stuff. That was mostly a call out to bring the MIST work to the team's attention. But if not, I really would like to spend some time on the fact that RTC continues to corrupt data, and that's a real problem. Jason, any thoughts? Jason Weil, any thoughts on like running the meeting? Do you want to dig a little bit deeper into like the mist and kernels topic, or should we talk about the RTC problem?
I think moving on, I wanted to make sure that if anybody had any questions about the first topic, seems like not the case. So let's move on to the RTC one.
Okay. Thank you, William, for that link. Appreciate it. And I'm going to leave that open so I can take a look at it later. Thank you. Yeah. So the RTC problem, I left links on the notes. I left several links to the key issues. I opened a new one, 14031. There's also another one, and the previous one that we had a year ago was open for context. I'm being pretty aggressive in dog fooding the RTC machinery. A year ago, I turned it on in my class. In the spring, I typically teach a class with about 70 students. These are fairly kind of competent, experienced Jupyter users, typically in statistics, computer science, economics, physics, a bit of a mix, data science. I have about 70 of them. It's big enough to get very real world usage. It's small enough that I can be somewhat experimental. A year ago, we found data corruption that led to a ton of work from the team, which I deeply appreciate. And right as the year was beginning, right around Christmas, 3.6 was coming out. And it seemed like 3.6 might address those issues after a ton of work that was done on what was causing data corruption. So I gave it a try. I put 3.6 as soon as the semester started and came out. I added it to our system. I'm able to iterate on that system pretty easily because I control how the image is built. It's a cloud-based deployment of Jupyter Hub with JupyterLab, and we turned RTC on, and immediately we started seeing data corruption again. In this case, the documents do not become as badly corrupted as we were seeing them last year. What happens is they get duplicate content. And this happens in notebooks, and it happens in text files as well. So pretty much anything that you have open with more than one tab visiting, and we have seen it happen not only with multiple people, different people collaborating, but simply the same user logging in from two browsers, or having, like, my TA opened his laptop in class and was teaching, and then closed his laptop, got to his office, left his laptop in his backpack, opened his desktop, logged in again to the hub, kept working, and then all of a sudden the notebook like quadrupled all of his cells. Like, it was a notebook with only 2 cells, and then it appeared 4 times. We end up with 4 copies of the content. I was preparing a demo actually for Mist, and then all of a sudden I had a tech file in a repo that I was making a little repo for Binder. I put it in, and then later when I went and opened the Binder, the tech file had the entire content of the LaTeX file twice. I hadn't even noticed because I just had it open in more than one tab. So it's pretty bad. It seems like it happens very easily. And unfortunately, it's kind of a bummer because I'm willing to let my students be a little bit guinea pigs, in the sense that I told them we are testing this. It's in the spirit of the class. The course is about open source and open science, and they know that we're using new things. But at the same time, my priority and my responsibility to them as university students is they're learning. They're not a testing lab. They're not Q&A interns, and so data loss is just unacceptable. And so I wanted to ask the team if people have looked into this. There's been some discussion. If you think there's any chance that we might get an actual fix for this very, very, very fast, I might keep it open. Otherwise, I'm going to have to turn this attempt off again. And unfortunately, that means we lose the opportunity to get feedback on the UX. If we have no data loss, I'm happy to experiment with the system. I had already opened an issue with our team to begin creating collaborative accounts on the system. We've taken some inspiration from what CoCalc does. We're in contact with what Min and others are, and Roland Thomas and others are doing at NERSC, because there's a deployment at NERSC. NERSC is one of the Department of Energy supercomputing centers where we have a deployment with RTC. We've vetted it with NERSC security. So we have an opportunity to get feedback on the UX and what does collaboration look like? What are the missing features? But obviously we can't do any of that if it's actually corrupting user data. Like, that's just a no-go. So I wanted to put this on the table. RTC has been for a long time very, very badly desired feature, something that we've worked a lot on. I think that obviously it's unfortunate that this is happening, but I wanted to get some feedback from the team on what you think might be fixed in very soon, and if not, unfortunately, I'll have to turn it off in our systems, go back to teaching the course normally, but then I won't be able to provide any feedback on this because I'll have to turn it off. If it's corrupting student data, that just can't happen. So I don't know what thoughts people have. And David Rochard, I appreciate that you've been looking into it and providing some input. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I think the most useful for us would be to have access to this YSTOR file, because this is really how we can reproduce the issue on our side. If it's possible for you to have access to it. I know that you had issues with that because it's erased after a session, I think.
Yeah, at this point, I don't know. I mean, unfortunately, the YSTOR files of when this happened are gone because they were already deleted, right? When they were in sessions that happened a few days ago, and so they don't exist anymore. We put the YSTOR on a temporary file system that's on the node, because putting the YSTOR SQLite database on the NFS home directory was just killing performance. And Brian suggested that we move it to a temporary SSD-based local disk. So we did that, which means those files are gone. We could, of course, add I talked to Ryan Lovett about adding a shutdown, a script that executes on shutdown that copies it back to the home directory and timestamps it so that we keep them. But obviously, at this point, those would be new files. The problem might or might not happen. And the issue is I can't really do that with my students. If I moving forward, I'm not sure what would be different that I could do there from what you guys could do. At this point, it's JupyterLab 3.6.1 with RTC on, and I would open it in two browsers, and it seems like it eats documents for breakfast as soon as you turn it on. and so I could try to do that and engineer the copying the YSTOR file back, but it won't be any different from what anyone else who actually tests this could do, because it seems to happen pretty quickly.
Yeah, the thing is that we don't see that on our side. It works pretty well. We actually have tests also in the CI of JupyterLab for RTC. So first thing is to reproduce it, and I don't think we've been able to do that yet.
I have a couple of questions to see if I can track the bug. In the deployment that you are using, when every user closes their session, does Jupyter server shuts down?
Yeah, I don't remember what the idle calling parameters are. It doesn't shut down immediately, but it does shut down eventually. But it's not immediate. I don't remember. We can try to find those parameters. I can show you where the configuration of that is, and give me a second. I'll tell you, because this is all done with public infrastructure. So this is the folder that has all of the Kubernetes files, the environment files that build the image, everything. And in one of those YAML files, those parameters for starting Jupyter Hub are somewhere in there. But I don't know. I don't remember what the idle shutdown timers are. It's probably on the order of half an hour, maybe an hour. It's my guess, but I haven't looked. I can ask. I can find out if that's important.
Yeah, because so the thing is, there is an issue that we know about. Basically, if the user keeps JupyterLab open and the document open in its browser, it closes the lib of the laptop and goes somewhere else. If the room for that document in the backend closes, if somehow the YSTOR gets removed, that means next time that the user reconnects, it will have the data loaded into the browser in memory, but we don't have that data loaded in memory in the backend. And that creates a duplication of the data in the front end, because we don't discard that data from the front end. That's why we were discussing about adding document sessions. And that could happen, for example, if the server session shuts down. You were saying that you remove, as soon as the server shuts down, you remove the YSTOR.
Yes, because the YSTOR right now is in /tmp. It's a temporary file, which means it's on the file system off the node of the Docker image. And so when the Docker image goes down, that file disappears with it. And then if the user reconnects, they're gonna get a new server, but they get a brand new session when they get a new server. So the whole thing restarts all over again, right?
No, because the issue is that the documents are not going to match if there is not a corresponding YStore, a YStore corresponding to the document that is present in the memory of the front end. It's a bit technical, but yeah, the real solution, as we said, is just to implement document sessions. So we need to do that.
So basically, if once the new server starts, if the user needs to reload the web page, JupyterLab, that's not the issue is not because of the document sessions. If the user doesn't need to reload the JupyterLab, that it sees the document and it just reconnects to the new server, then it's because of document sessions.
I believe we always, because when we reconnect and there's no server available, we get the "Do you want to restart your server?" button, and that forces a complete page reload.
Then it's probably is not because of document sessions. We will need to look into that.
Okay. So it seems like this is more complicated than unfortunately than I can like afford to handle with a live class of students. So I'm going to turn it off in our courses, and I'm going to recommend that we turn it off here at Berkeley. And unfortunately, I won't be able to provide much feedback because I could provide feedback kind of within the bounds of actually teaching the course, but if I have to, but I don't have the bandwidth, and I can't have the students be testers. So I'll do my best to provide feedback on and test on my own, but I will turn it off because it doesn't look like this is an easy one. And I really appreciate people's time and input in this. I know this is hard, so thanks for the feedback.
Okay, any other questions about the RTC or any additional discussions?
Could we use it again in like for the meetings? Thought it was pretty valuable when we were testing it.
I was actually going to suggest that. I was a good call, William. I remember when I logged into HackMD, I thought we're basically at the point of having that. And one of my concerns is that I appreciate that the team is testing a lot of this and that you guys are not seeing these problems, but I wonder how many of you use JupyterLab as your like working system rather than developing it. Are you all day logged in, creating notebooks and writing that? Probably not, because your jobs are different, right? I'm not blaming anyone here. I'm simply saying that your jobs are different and probably are more focused on doing development than using the system. I see these problems when I'm using it, not when I'm trying to like add features to it, which obviously at this point I unfortunately don't have the bandwidth for. But using it for the team as the RTC engine, I mean, the HackMD experience is actually at this point pretty much basically works. I mean, you can have exactly kind of the split pane render experience kind of works. And so if we hosted an instance that's persistent, that would be nice, and something where we could iterate quickly, test it with patches, even like have a meeting with a version of a specific version. That might be a good idea.
There's been like 4 or 5 meetings in the last year of this exact meeting that used RTC. And I think that it was really helpful to notice some issues. And then I think there were substantial issues, which is why we stopped using it. But I would say we should use it because it's good to dog food that sort of thing.
Want to do a quick poll using the reactions feature? Vote check mark if you want to try it next week, or X if you want to stay using HackMD. Seeing check marks pop up. I think we
Thank you, folks. I
think we got a
appreciate
majority. That. Yeah, let's do that. Who is hosting next week? Is Darian coming back next week?
Darian should be back. Yes.
Yeah. I'll send a quick note to him, just to make sure he's aware of that. So I don't want to catch him off guard when he's trying to do all this. Okay. Any other topics before I stop the recording? All right, brace yourselves.